Good morning, everyone. Assuming that everybody can hear us and see us all right. If not, we'll be talking to ourselves for the majority of the morning. Let's see, we got some people trickling in. And I'll just share my screen here. Just wait another few minutes to get started. Or should we honor the people who came on time, Cameron? What do you think?
Let's give the stragglers a couple minutes.
Yeah.
In my meetings, I usually cut it off at the 3 minute mark.
Yeah, that's fair. To enjoy the Edmonton skyline in the meantime. That's what it looks all of 4 weeks of the year when it's not covered in snow. Awesome. Well, I'd say let's get into it. So by way of introduction, my name is John Billio. I think most of you here will know me, VP of Customer Success and Consulting here, and let Cameron and Mike introduce them as well.
Hey, everybody. I'm Cameron, Director of Product here at Darkhorse Emergency.
And I'm Mike Forbes, Battalion Chief Administration, Spokane Fire Department.
Thank Mike for jumping on and helping out, and he was one of our beta testers on unit capability, so we'll have some things to share. So we're really excited to talk about this today. It is a feature that has been a long time coming. We've been working on it, I want to say, for a couple of years to really get this one ironed, but it represents a significant level up in our deployment modeling, and I think we can quite confidently say that there's nothing out there like it. So what we want to talk about today is what that unit capabilities is. It's can be a little bit complex, but we want to kind of lift the veil and make sure that it is easy to understand. And we'll do that by presenting a number of examples, and we can have a bit of a chat with Mike just to understand how he used it. I think throughout all of this, in terms of housekeeping, there is a Q&A function on our Zoom. So if you have questions, you can kind of type them in there, and then we'll keep an eye out on those questions, and we'll break. And at the end, we can tackle any questions that we haven't covered. Um, and we should be able to make it a good session. And of course, the session is recorded, so we'll follow up with all of the recordings, so you can share that or revisit it. And yeah, re-experience this wonderful webinar time and time again. Okay, so what is unit capabilities? So, like I said, we've been working on this for quite some time, and can now say that there's a number of different new capabilities in our deployment model. So this specifically is in deployment. So what we can do now is we can map the specific response capabilities of each apparatus. For example, this pumper is able to, provide pumping service. We have a ladder, hazmat. They have specific capabilities. They're not just a vehicle. And we can also map in the response plan. So which capabilities do we dispatch to which incident types? For example, okay, if it's a medical call, we will typically first dispatch this medical vehicle. Or if it's a high-risk fire incident, then we will dispatch 3 pumpers, 1 ladder, and 1 battalion chief. So we know that detail of which response you typically dispatch to which incident. Um, Similarly, we also know the capability requirements for targets. So if we're looking at, say, an ERF, five vehicles, we can now split that up to say, okay, we need at least, we need 5 vehicles, but we need at least 1 ladder, and we need at least 1 chief within this time factor. And then based on all of that, we can also calculate the availability to respond. So knowing that there's medical demand in this specific area, we can kind of show and see, how busy that medical unit is going to be based on the demand that's in that specific area. So This might be a little complex, but I think if we walk through some of these examples in a little bit more detail, it'll start to make sense. So all of this new information can be mapped into your tool to increase the capabilities and the calculation accuracy. So what does that actually do for the model? So even if you don't use advanced questions, like the model is more accurate. So I think many of you will have noticed that if you open deployment recently, there's sort of this use improved model banner. So the way we calculate business, the way we calculate performance is more accurate. And you know, we have that toggle in there. So maybe if you're working on a presentation, you can kind of compare and contrast. Like we've done the heavy lift, and there isn't major differences for anything for anyone, but it does feel like we have a higher degree of confidence in our model. We also feel like it's easier to use than before. Before there were some ways of getting at sort of like, how do I optimize my hazmat placement or my ladder placement? But it was using filters and specific sort of, more clicks. So we feel like it'll be quicker and easier to use these more advanced questions. And it is also it's opened the door to some previously unanswerable questions or ways that we couldn't really get at. So what is my ability to bring 3 ladders, a battalion chief and medic on scene within 10 minutes, right? Like that level of detail we previously couldn't really answer. So we can now open a world to some of these more complex questions and kind of deal with these more complex response plans. So what are some of the questions that you can answer? We'll go through some examples, but I mean, at a high level, what is our ability to get these, pumpers, aerials, battalion chief on scene, and maybe what is our major constraint, right? Maybe we're really good at getting the pumpers and the aerials on scene, but the battalion chief is actually the limitation, or it's the aerials, right? So we can kind of hone in and diagnose what is the limiter of these more complex response plans. But also adding sort of specific specialty units. So like, okay, this 2-person medic can take on low acuity medical calls. What does that do to our system? And where should we best put a unit like that? How might that impact the busyness of our other apparatus in those areas? So all those things we can hone in into a little more detail. Or like looking at specific technical rescue, water rescue, things like that.
All
Cameron, you
right.
want to speak to this? Yeah.
Yes. So I think we're going to try to cut through the complexity and jump to some demos right away here. But I just wanted to kind of give a tour of the new elements of unit capabilities that you're going to see in the interface of deployment compared to before. So as a starting point, this diagram represents how we were doing predictions in deployment prior to the release of unit capabilities. So your model basically has a couple of input, your apparatus and staffing, your target criteria, of course, your demand, and then the output of those inputs from the predictive model is your performance metrics. So like John was saying before, with unit capabilities, we are significantly increasing the amount of detail that goes into the model that, like John says, makes it more accurate and allows you to answer some different questions. So in addition to just the basic apparatus, as John was mentioning, we're adding detailed attributes to help you describe which different types of incidents those apparatus will be capable of responding to. Your response plans are going to allow the system to understand uh, overall what is happening across all the demand types. So no matter what specific analysis you're doing, it's going to take into account time that your apparatus may be spending dealing with other call types in the system overall. And then the more detailed target criteria. So instead of just a number of staff or a number of apparatus that you require within the time target to meet that criteria, we can specify the specific apparatus attributes that are expected to be able to fulfill that. So then what the model does with those more detailed inputs, kind of two main things. First, it uses the response plan and your entire emergent demand in your response area and your apparatus attributes to estimate the utilization for all your apparatus across the system. And then taking that as the context, it's going to give you performance metrics for your given scenario and target for the specific thing you're looking at. So I think, yeah, seems pretty complicated, but I think some examples will make this concrete and easy to grasp.
I think so as well. So while we were pulling that up, I'm just seeing if there's any questions. I don't see anything in our Q&A. So
Okay.
continue.
So I've got three examples to share today. First one, we'll kind of walk through the feature itself and look at an aerial placement scenario in Brampton, who's one of our other early adopters of the feature. We have a neat complex ERF analysis to show in Toronto, which is one of our big departments. And then we can show a scenario about medic placement in Spokane, and hopefully dig in with Mike just to understand some of the context behind the questions he was trying to answer in his department. So anyway, here we are in Brampton, and an early question put to us by Brampton is, um, how do we think about optimizing the placement of our aerial units to maximize our performance on our fire ERF targets? So we're looking at the old way of modeling this here. We have this 5-unit ERF with a target of 5 apparatus in under 10 minutes and 20 seconds. And if we want to get more specific with our analysis, we could always go in here and pick just, our aerials, pumpers and squads, for example, to get a sense. But that doesn't really capture the full constraint of Brampton's real target. So now that we have unit capabilities, I can switch over to a similar target. So right here we have structure fire low. So this is still requiring 5 apparatus, but built right into the target. We're saying that in order to meet this target, you need to send 5 engine company units, and 2 of those have to be aerials to meet this specific target. So the model is going to run here, and you can see that because we're taking into account that more specific target, the anticipated performance against that target is actually lower because we know which specific units we have to send to every one of those structure fire low calls. So this allows us to do things like consider possible moves of aerials within Brampton. So I look at our over goals here, and we might say we're considering a move of the aerial at station 209 here to 208. So if we were to make that move, numbers are going to run here, and we'll get a sense of what the impact for this service would be. So it looks like we got a bit of a performance boost there, a bit of a reduction in drive time and overgoal incidents. If we look at the delta here, we can see the pattern of impact of change in overgoal incidents, which is interesting. Like, you don't necessarily see the difference exactly surrounding those stations because this is a complex target, and the impacts are going to be on, what areas of the service area are affected by the aerial being required coming from this station instead of this station. So an interesting pattern there. So that's kind of a specific ERF analysis that is now possible to do very accurately with unit capabilities. Prior to unit capabilities, we could definitely get at that answer, but it would require probably additional supplementary analyses, and the end result would be like harder to build and not as accurate at the end of the day. So it's kind of a first look at some of the power you get with that feature. So race through there, but you can see that our unit capabilities targets, like I was mentioning, are more specific in our station pop-ups. We can see that each apparatus has their set of attributes, and those can even be customized on a per scenario basis if you're thinking about adding custom units that have a unique set of calls they might be responding to. And then finally, under our apparatus busyness, these pop-ups give you an idea of the change in busyness for apparatus. So look at our pumper here and see that by moving the aerial out of station 209, we're expecting this pumper to get like 5% significantly busier on weekday daytime. So that's another kind of insight as part of this analysis that wasn't available prior to unit capabilities. Okay, I'm going to switch over to another example here, following on in the ERF analysis theme. So in Toronto, this is a large department, and they're working on setting up their own set of ERFs for fire calls. And you can see here that their ERF is even more specific than the one we looked at in Brampton. So what this is saying here is that for a moderate complexity fire, we're going to want to see an RIT, a lift, a squad, two pumpers, and two district chiefs at that incident. And so the question put to us by Toronto was, okay, obviously the performance against that new target is not great right now, but how do we figure out what the bottlenecks are there in terms of everyone we're expecting to show up on scene there, who is getting there slowest or slowly enough that our on target percentage is being compromised. So now with unit capabilities, we have this handy little target criteria filter selector here. And what this does is basically allow us to temporarily remove some of the requirements of the target to see what the impact on performance would be. So I could go through here one at a time and say, okay, let's look at just our RIT. If the target only involved sending an RIT, we'd have 95% performance. The lift, 97% performance. Squad, that's down at 57%. The pumper, 95, district chief, 55. So right away, just from looking at that, we can diagnose that it's our ability to get the squad and the two district chiefs on scene that's limiting our overall response performance for that ERF target. So if I'm looking at my RIT, my lift, and my pumper, my two pumpers all together, we can get those there on target 90%. But we know we have to look into maybe the placement or resourcing for squads and district chiefs if we want to improve our performance against that particular target. So again, pretty quick and easy way that you can get at some insights that really were not discoverable in that way prior to unit capabilities. Okay, a final example I want to share, and maybe I'll share just a really simple look at this in Spokane first, and then we can get Mike's kind of color commentary on it. But I believe a lot of what or some of what Mike has been dealing with is thinking about placement of medic units with the goal of trying to take some of the load off of the engine units in his service area. So as a really simple example of how I can look at that, like right now, I think I have this set up where we have one of our medics in station 15 here, and maybe we're considering moving it over to station 18. So just looking at an EMS response target right now, you can really easily, like, let's check the status quo first. So the engine in 15 right now is only busy about 5% of the time because that medic is there. And in station 18, we have a very busy engine that's busy about 18% of the time in the daytime. So what would the impact be overall if we move that medic over to station 18? Just take it out of here, add it back in, let the model do its thing. And we can see that that move, pretty even across the board, cost us a little tiny bit of performance. We can see the difference in performance and over goals is really just limited to those two station areas. And then we can take a look in the stations and see that this engine is now all the way down to 4.8% busyness during the day. And this engine here is now 17% busy during the day. So also pretty busy, but maybe not quite as much as the engine at station 18. So I think like the takeaway from this type of move is you can think about like very different units, like engines versus medic units that are responding to a shared demand set and understanding like the trade-offs between different impacts of utilization and overall performance that might be involved in moving those resources around. So maybe I'll just park the demo there and we'll bring on Mike. Uh, Mike started using, or we started setting up unit capabilities for Mike, I think around October last year. So maybe Mike, can you just give us some context? Again, thank you for joining today. I really appreciate it. Could you start by just giving us some context on the types of questions you're asking or the problems you're trying to solve using this capability?
Yeah, absolutely. We were going through like a deployment change in terms of some of our smaller trucks, the medic units, and then we also have squads, which are BLS units. And so trying to figure out where to optimally place those. And it started to get relatively complicated with how many ALS units, how many BLS units did we want to have? Where did we want to put them? But then also some of those units were also had other capabilities, you know, technical rescue, or just they are considered fire crews in our model as well. And so how did that play into all the other elements? And then also complicating the analysis was the auto aid agreements with folks to the south, north, and east of us. And so it just started to get to that point where I felt like we were just sort of like guessing. And then when I started talking to folks at Darkhorse about the unit capabilities piece, it's like, oh, maybe this can help answer that question quite a bit. And so, I mean, a lot of times it is just confirming sort of like what your experience and your, you know, kind of what you think would happen based on just having worked in those areas for so long. But knowing that there's actually some data behind that was, I don't know, kind of helps you make like kind of confirm some of your suspicions, or maybe you get surprised and you're like, well, that actually isn't going to do what I thought it might do. And so that was a pretty significant element for us in determining where to place units. And then now that we've sat on it for about, I don't know, 7 or 8 months of some of those moves, and talking to the folks in the stations and just looking at the actual numbers of UHUs and call volumes and whatnot, it does seem like, you know, while nothing will ever be perfect unless you can just infinitely add units everywhere in the city, but what we have to work with seems to be balanced pretty well considering the way our calls are distributed through the city.
Nice. Was there like a particular like answer that you got from the unit capabilities analysis that was like one that surprised you in particular or was insightful or impactful?
Well, I think the example you just showed there, Cameron, like moving medic 15 up to medic 18, you know, it's the moving it up to 18s. We're still working out some of the some of the pieces with the agreement of how that medic unit goes across lines. And so it may change things a little bit more there, but it really did engine 18, and then also how it affects engine 99, which is the auto aid station up there to the north. That medic unit definitely affected those units significantly. And then that little wiper tool that you use to show the before and after, I always find that to be sort of like the visual fascination of like there's what happens, and it makes sense, and then there it's confirmed with and I'll kind of like balance that off of like the actual numbers that I'm seeing for those units too, and watch them for a while and see what's actually happening.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like the kind of the outcome for your department overall was, I think you mentioned before that like maybe sped up some decision making, because rather than having to like trial all of these moves for a few weeks or months to see what actually happens, you kind of like prototype a lot more ideas in the app and then be able to kind of prioritize the testing of the most promising ones in real life.
That's exactly it. Like, we our operations group will sit around and we'll talk about what if we did this, what if we did that, and then also I'll come back with like a few different game plans and then put them in here, see what happens, and be like, I think that one is worth trying. And then there's all the other elements of like, do you actually have room in those stations to put those units, and the personnel, impacts and all that side of things. But being able to like at least from the response performance and incident volume and things along those lines, it helps you at least if you're going to make these moves and ask people to like move out of their station, and like at least you're making it a best guess with some backing behind it, as opposed to just like your gut feeling or your institutional knowledge that may or may not be based on reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you have any ideas for like future questions or analyses you want to try to tackle with the tool going forward?
I think we ended up uploading, I forget, I don't know how many run cards we put in with Marco, but quite a few of them. I mean, I think the majority of our responses. So I think, fire responses, extrications, ALS, BLS calls, alarm systems, things we put in the sort of like the bread and butter calls. I think it would be interesting to start pursuing some of the more specialty options. And that's just a matter of just adding those response plans. I would like to pursue more about the busyness element, which, I mean, it's built in there well now, but I also think an incident count correlation to those units as well would be, that's something we kind of think about all the time. Like, oh, how many calls per day is that unit going on? And if I move it over here, what do I anticipate based on my past history? So I think that would be a feature that would be useful.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about how you put that to use in your department.
Yeah, my pleasure.
John, I think we probably have time here to just give a little bit of an overview of what implementation configuration of the tool will look like for those interested.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, like in our initial versions of implementing this, it was quite labor intensive for our clients. I mean, Mike and Marco worked to bring all these response plans and run cards in on a manual basis. And I know that some of you may have upwards of 100 response plans, and some of you might even go into 4 digits for response plans, which obviously you don't want to drop down with 1,000 different response plans. So we do have a bit of a methodology to simplify that and make it easy to sort of have a lens of automated, an automated kind of organization of different low, moderate, high risk response plan based on what we're seeing in your data that you're actually sending. So we can make that implementation a lot easier. But yeah, ultimately, implementation, we need to understand what attributes your units have. We can kind of guess if it's called a pumper. We kind of know what it's likely going to do, but we still want to validate that with you for your incident plans. And we want to have some idea of what sort of response plans you're using and what sort of ones that you're wanting to measure. So when we talk about what does onboarding look like, it is us getting that information from you and kind of loading it in. And like all of you who've been through our implementation processes, we don't just want to throw something in the wall and leave you to it. We want to make sure that it's valid, that our assumptions are valid. So we take that very seriously and do want to spend some time kind of validating these fields and making sure that we have it all set up correctly and kind of make sure that those first analyses that we have some good eyes on that. So I would say if there's interest, I mean, everybody currently already has the new model that uses a more accurate prediction of busyness. That's already in your app. If you're interested in, which I hope many of you are, if you're interested in sort of like layering the actual response plans in, then that would be an email to your analyst, or we can kind of bring it up in our next check-in and kind of talk about what that would look like for your individual department. Anything to add on that, Cameron? Did I capture that well?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, like John was saying, we have a bit more streamlined process now. So if you don't want to, or it's not convenient for you to share a big data dump of run cards or CAD dispatch policy or that kind of thing, what we can do is run kind of a generalized analysis of your historical response data and propose what your deployment response plan could be as a starting point to kind of look at together and fine tune.
So I saw that don't have any questions yet. I do want to open it up to some questions. We can always get people come on mute and kind of ask, or you can put them in the chat. Yeah, we are quite excited about this. It does represent a powerful upgrade that we have been working on a while. It wasn't an easy one to get across the finish line, as Cameron kind of got a little bit more gray on the temples trying to get that out.
Worth it.
But
Totally worth
yeah,
it.
we're quite happy with how this one turned out and what it can do, and we look forward to kind of seeing what our clients can solve with this, right? So I would add challenge us with some difficult questions using this tool. Bring some of those hard problems that have been top of mind for you, and we look forward to tackling them with you together.
No questions. I guess we can call this webinar a success.
Yeah, we did that good of a job. It is so hyper clear. Yeah. I know this could be a bit of a complex one, but yeah, like I said, we can dig into this a little bit further with all of you. So thanks everyone for hanging out. We'll be able to give you some time back, and we'll look forward to working with you on the next steps.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again,
And
Mike.
and thanks, Mike, for being here.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Talk soon.